Hey guys, Cookie here. So let's say that you've been hearing about all the hype around this game called Palworld and want to give it a try. You jump into the game and see a plethora of potential pals to collect and put to work, or maybe go alongside you into the wild. And you want to know which pals are the best to get right out of the gate. Well, this is the list for just such an occasion. I compiled a list of the top 10 pals to collect early game in Palworld. I ranked this list based on a couple factors, but primarily how useful the pals are in both exploring and working at the base, but also factored in how difficult the pals are to collect early game and how likely you are to capture them. I also did this based on the spawn point at Windswept Hills, which is the easiest and least difficult spawn point in the game, so the pals will primarily come from that area. Also, I don't know how most of these pals are officially pronounced, so I'm just going to do my best with pronunciation, so, be nice. I'll also show you where to find these pals on the map thanks to an awesome interactive map created by the Reddit user Embarrassed Notice 32. Also, I will just be showing the map immediately around the area of Windswept Hills instead of the entire world map, just so you can actually more accurately see where the pals are, since I'm working in that area anyway. With all that being said, let's go on with the list. First off, at number 10, I selected the Cremis. The Cremis is one of the cutest pals in the game for my money, but that's not why it leads off the list. It also isn't that useful at the base because it only does gathering and nothing else. However, it is very effective to keep in your party early game, as it has multiple attack moves that make it a real asset in early fights that you will get into. Sandblast, Shockwave, and Powerbomb are all effective and devastating move combos early in a game, or even later on in the game. I'm around level 30 and still use the Cremis occasionally when it comes to fighting. The Cremis is usually in the first 6 or so pals that you will discover, making it very easy to find. I recommend capturing the Cremis before attacking it though, because like I said, it packs a punch. It's also very easy to find, as there are spawn points all over the map, as well as many near Windswept Hills. Here is where you can find the Cremis on the map. At number 9 is the Cattiva. The Cattiva is one of the first pals you will encounter in Palworld. It is very easy to capture, although slightly more difficult than the Lamball or Chickapie because it is easily startled. However, in the extreme early game, it can be a major asset. Cattivas are probably going to be one of the first pals you encounter that can mine. Mining pals can be very hard to find in Palworld early game, so you definitely want to make sure you have one of these on hand. Cattivas also can gather, handiwork, and transport, which take care of almost all the jobs you'll need in your first couple of levels, and as you can see, the Cattiva spawns pretty much everywhere, so it's very, very easy to find. Number 8 on the list is the Foxparks. There is 2 reasons Foxparks is on this list. Number 1, the Foxparks is easy to get and doesn't put up too much of a fight, plus you can find it easily in the early game. But secondly, in the major early game, it is the only pal you will find who can kindle. Kindling is how you cook food, or a little further on, it will be the way you get metal ingots. Cooking is an important play early in the game to keep hunger at bay, and if you don't have a Foxparks, you'll be doing that all by yourself. Also, a Foxparks turns into a flamethrower. What's not to love about that? Here are some of the Foxparks spawn points. Next up at number 7 is the Capertee. The Capertee is slightly hard to find in the early game, but after a little bit of playing, it will be something you find very frequently. Capertees are one of the first pals you will encounter that actually has a level 2 skill, which for the Capertee is planting. Planting is not a skill you'll find that often in the early game, which makes the Capertee absolutely vital to keep your berry plantations running at a high rate, and to keep you and your pals fed. As an added bonus, if the Capertee grazes at the ranch, it will find even more red berries. Capertees don't spawn right at the initial spawn point of Windswept Hills, but are just slightly further away. In at number 6 is the Lamball. I know some of you might say this is the worst pal in the game, but you would be wrong. The Lamball is likely to be the first pal you come in contact with, and the ease at which you can acquire a Lamball is the Lamball's biggest strength. They are super easy to capture and put up very little resistance. Once they are at your base, they can do handiwork and transporting to get you started. Lamballs also produce wool on the ranch, which isn't that easy to acquire from other means, making the Lamball very useful, especially for an early game player. And as you can see, Lamballs spawn absolutely everywhere. You cannot miss them. Halfway through the list and on to number 5, it is the Celeray. The Celeray isn't the easiest POW to find early game, but it isn't too far away. The Celeray can be a bit tough to capture since it's flying and also is generally out over the water, but it's worth the struggle to get one of these. One reason is because if you put them at your base, they have the watering skill, which is a little rare in the early game and very important, but the primary reason to have a Celeray is their passive skill of the Zephyr Glider. Flyers are very hard to get early game, so more than likely this is going to be your best way to fly. It also doesn't take a lot of resources to craft the glider for the Celeray, and once you have it, you can use it to get to places on the map you can't hardly get to without it in the early game. I definitely recommend you have one of these on you when you're starting out. And here are the spawn points, and as you can see, primarily over water. At number 4 is the Eikthyr Deer. This deer would be higher on the list if it was easier to capture. You'll have to wait a little bit before being able to take one of these pals on, but they are a huge asset once you do. The Eikthyr Deer has the logging skill, and it's at level 2. There aren't a lot of pals that can do logging early on, so that's really nice to have. But more importantly is the Eikthyr Deer can be ridden with a saddle, making it one of the first pals that you can ride in the game. You'll absolutely want this early on. Plus, the Eikthyr Deer is very formidable in a fight and can use moves while you ride it. The Eikthyr Deer has a lot of spawns, as you can see, and can be found in any of these locations. The last 3 are going to be mainstays when it comes to working at your base. The first of those is the Pen Gullet at number 3. The Pen Gullet is easy to find at multiple spawn points across the map and has some very useful early game skills. None more important than the watering skill though. As I said earlier, early game doesn't have a lot of water pals, making the Pen Gullet an absolute asset. It's also one of the first pals you will find that has 4 abilities, including watering, handiwork, cooling, and transporting. The Pen Gullet can also be a rocket launcher, so that's cool too. The Pen Gullet can be found all over the map, as you can see. In the runner-up position is the Tansy. This Tansy is one of the best workers in the game because of versatility. The Tansy has 5 different working abilities, including planting, handiwork, gathering, lumbering, and transporting. All this means that the Tansy won't be caught wandering around because there's so much that it can do. It does take a bit of exploring to find a Tansy, but not a whole lot, and they don't put up a ton of resistance either. Plus, 2 of those skills, planting and lumbering that I mentioned earlier, are not common skills to find in the early game, but they are so important. So early game, this might be the most versatile worker that you're going to find. Here's where you can find the Tansy. So before I take a look at number 1, let me show you a few honorable mentions. First off is the Vanworm. The Vanworm did not make my list, mainly because I don't consider it an early game pal. It's very effective in combat and is probably the first good flyer that you will get, but it's not early game enough for this list, and it's also not that easy to acquire, but you should definitely get it if you're far enough into the game. Also, the Vixie. The Vixie is the cutest animal in the game, in my opinion, but again, that's not the point. The Vixie is great for the base as a farming animal because it will dig up PAL spheres all the time. The Vixie isn't that hard to capture either, however, the availability of the Vixie is very limited, and they're really only good for getting PAL spheres and not a whole lot else, except being cute. The Dire Howl was another honorable mention because it's a great mount, but it's not as good as the Eikthyr Deer because it's a bit harder to capture and does very little at the base. My final honorable mention is the Flack. The Flack is a nice pal with a name that's just 1 letter away from a naughty word. However, it's just a slightly worse version of the Pen Gullet and also is a little harder to find and capture than the Pen Gullet, so it misses out on my list. And at number 1 is the Liftmonk. The Liftmonk is not a hard pal to collect or hard to find. It takes a little bit of exploring, but that's it. And just like the Tansy, the Liftmonk has a lot of versatility as well. The Tansy and Liftmonk also have almost the same skills, except the Liftmonk has medicine production instead of transporting, making it invaluable, because medicine production is a very rare early skill. The Liftmonk can also turn into a machine gun, so that's also very useful, I think. So because of ease of capture and base versatility, I would say the Liftmonk is the best early game POW to collect for new players, and you can find it in all of these locations. Alright, that does it for me. Hope this helps some new players and hope you guys agree with me, but if you don't, or if you do, let me know in the comments down below and tell me what your recommendations for an early game POW would be, and how much fun you're having in Palworld, or whatever you want to talk about. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please hit the bell for notifications for more Palworld and other video game content right here on Swanee Plays Games, and we will see you in the next video.